Hey all, I'm just here to introduce very briefly the topic of the politics of public opinion. Really, most of what I want to say is it's in those narrated slides and in our textbook and the study guide. But sort of brief overview, right? We know that in a constitutional democracy like ours, public opinion is really central to our politics, as it should be, and in some ways, right, as it must be. In some ways, right, that's the dealio in a democracy, is that what we the people think and want politically is important. You know, it's not everything, but it's a lot. It's a lot. So public opinion is just a critical factor in our politics. And as I think I note in the slides, it's also true that even in an autocracy, right, even in Vladimir Putin's Russia or President Xi's China, right, even in those autocratic regimes, public opinion matters. Not as much as it does in a democracy, but even in those contexts, it still matters, right? Putin's a little worried that he may not have the support of the Russian people. And he's especially concerned about the opinions of the Russian elite. But he has some concerns on that front. He's no fool. He knows that in an autocratic regime, you can go from being top dog one day to running for your life in the streets of Moscow the next, if the public turns against you in a big and dramatic way. All right? And in a democracy, right, hopefully the mob is not going to chase elected leaders in the street for justice. Hopefully, they'll punish them electorally by not supporting their bid to get reelected. And we've talked about this in some ways already, haven't we? That any American president knows that, all things being equal, it's better to be popular than to be unpopular with the people. Because if you're popular with the people, right, you'll have more power in working with Congress. Because Congress is not going to be very responsive to an unpopular president. They'll be more responsive to a popular president, right? Because they're concerned about their own reelection efforts in the future. The other thing I would just note here, and I always think, wow, should I lead off with that in those narrated slides or do it at the end? In this case, I did it at the end. But we should recognize, right, that while public opinion in a democracy is very important, and I'm certainly supportive of that because I support democratic regimes and I do not support autocratic regimes. I have a strong normative position on that question. Political scientists are not always going to be neutral, nor should they be. Where was I headed with that? There is a dark side to public opinion in a democracy. There's no getting around it. It's just true. Right? The mass public can be grossly underinformed about basic issues around them. That's something that political scientists like myself, we're working against, right? Trying to impart basic knowledge to as many people as possible. Right? Because that's how we the people hold government accountable, right? Through having good information about what's going on in politics in the world. If we the people don't have that, right? They can't hold their leaders accountable, and you lose that democratic thread of we the people having ultimate power, popular sovereignty. So I'm not saying, right, that the average American needs to be as informed about politics as a professional political scientist. That's foolish. But right, and I don't know where the line is exactly, of course, but you want people to have a minimum of knowledge about the basics. Right, and the data suggests that many of us don't have even the minimum. You've seen some of those late night talk shows, right, where they do man or woman on the street interviews, and they turn up some somewhat horrifying things about what people don't know about politics. Really basic stuff. So that's something to be concerned about. And then the other issue has become particularly pressing in the current moment in which we are living. Is the free flow of misinformation. What do they say? That a lie gets halfway around the world before a truth even gets out of the starting blocks. And they've actually done studies that show that on social media, falsehoods travel more quickly and to more people than truths. Right? Because the truth is often, quite honestly, complicated and somewhat technical, and therefore to many people, somewhat boring. Not that interesting, not very clickable. Right? Conspiracy theories, man, you can churn those out quickly and endlessly. You can make them really dramatic and fun in a dark way. And you can make them really interesting and super simplistic. Right? And people tend to gravitate to that more than to the truth, because the truth, again, tends to be complex, multifaceted, a lot of gray areas. It can get fairly technical and into the weeds. You know, and then, right, the rise of the internet has facilitated that bifurcation of falsehoods proliferating, the truth reproducing at a much slower rate and reaching fewer people. So we live, and I remember this, people, because I'm pretty old. I remember when we political scientists were optimistic about the rise of the internet. This would have been in the 90s, early 90s. We were excited, right? We were like, wow, the free flow of information, the democratization of information, the empowerment of we the people. Endless information right at their fingertips. Hasn't worked out that way, people. It hasn't been a godsend. It's been Satan from hell. Right? Oh, it's been just super disturbing. And with the rise of deepfakes and ChatGPT and all of that, like it's becoming increasingly problematic. It's not getting better. It's getting worse. It's kind of like global warming. It's not getting better. It's getting worse. Oh, what are we coming to? I'm not entirely sure, but it's not good. Right? That's another dark side to public opinion and the democracy. And that's not unique to the United States, right? That's a generic problem for democracies around the globe. It's probably one of the reasons we're experiencing what some are calling a democratic recession. Because autocracies and authoritarian figures, and we have them right here in America, need I belabor that point any more than I have already, they love the rise of conspiracy theories traveling quickly and being taken seriously by tens of millions of people. They love that. It serves their purposes super well. So these are worrisome developments. And I'm not saying that means, therefore, the end of democracy, but I'm saying there's work to be done, and it's often hard work, right, that a lot of people shy away from because they got other things going on in their lives. I get it. Right, but without a reasonably high-functioning constitutional democracy, you'd be surprised how quickly your ability to go about your everyday life starts to narrow as we replace constitutional democracies with tyrannical autocracies. There's not a whole lot of freedom under those sorts of regimes. All right, I'm going to leave it there. But check out those slides in our text, because there's also a lot of positive things to say about public opinion and American constitutional democracy.